Has Sony topped Canon to become the #1 camera maker? Has the Nikon Z6 Mark III helped Nikon take back lost ground? And has the lack of new Panasonic cameras further eroded their market share position? But before we get to the details, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, helps this channel grow, and keeps you up to date on the latest camera coverage. Previous reports have shown that Canon's market share was down a staggering 11.2% over 2022 to 41.2%. But the numbers had left out a significant component, and that's DSLR sales. Not just deflating Canon numbers, but inflating Sony's numbers. And if we take into account DSLR sales, reality shows that for 2023, Canon didn't lose any ground, but they didn't gain any ground either, holding firm at 46.5%. But Sony continued to gain ground, up 1.7% to 27.9%, a 6% gain over 2022. And with Sony about to release so many updates to some of their most popular cameras, such as the A7R5, the A7 IV, one of the most popular cameras since it came out about, what, two and a half years ago now? Is it 3 years? I mean, time is going by so quickly. And then, of course, the A7S III and the FX3. Now, when the FX3 came out, a lot of people were thinking that Sony's done with the A7S III and we won't see an A7S IV. But if we take a look at other, well, models, like the A7C, when Sony released the A7CR and the A7C II, the A7C stayed on the marketplace, so we could see multiple SKUs from Sony. So with all those cameras due to be announced within the first quarter of 2025, could we see Sony finally break that 30% market share barrier? They certainly blew through 20% pretty quickly. And despite the positive reception to the Nikon Z6 Mark III, which happened this year and won't be in last year's numbers, Nikon lost 0.4% to 11.3%, a 3.4% loss from 2022. And with the announcement of the Nikon Z9, followed up by the Nikon Z8 last year and the Nikon Z6 Mark III this year, I really felt that, well, Nikon was back in their normal stride, producing really solid cameras, best-in-class cameras. I was really surprised to see their market share drop again last year, although a small amount, but still. Remember, Nikon just a few years ago was around 24% market share. But one thing seems to be coming through the numbers, that the people that are migrating away from Nikon to mostly Sony, they're not the pros. They're ordinary average folks that are not really leaving to go to Sony, but you know what? That latest iPhone, it's good enough. Pros, well, they're not jumping away from Nikon anytime soon. In fact, they're very happy with what they're seeing the camera maker make. But that can't be said for other camera companies. More on that later. Now, Fujifilm, well, they managed to gain 0.2% to 6%, and that's a 3.3% gain over 2022, continuing their slow but steady growth, climbing out of the basement. But Panasonic, with their long delay between refreshes of their major cameras, such as the S1 and the S1R, it's almost October. We can go back 6 years when Panasonic first teased/announced the S1 and the S1R. 6 long years. That's an awful long time to wait for the S1R Mark II, the S1 Mark II, or the S1H Mark II. And we do hope that over the next 4 to 5 weeks, we do get a major announcement from Panasonic. But if they don't announce something, that would put it into 6.5 years since the S1 and the S1R was announced. Panasonic produces really solid cameras, really good lenses. But making people wait 6 to 7 years for a refresh in a marketplace that is, how shall we say, vibrant. This isn't 2018 or 2015. Canon's producing really incredible cameras. The R5 Mark II, the R5, we've got the Nikon Z8 and the Nikon Z9. And Sony, they're continuing to produce camera after camera for both stills hybrid users and video-centric users. They're producing high-resolution cameras, 8K cameras. It just, in this marketplace, Panasonic has to do a whole lot more. They need to refresh a whole lot sooner. And I understand that Panasonic Global is in trouble and that they're in a bit of a crisis situation. But if they don't drop that refresh cycle down to 2 to 4 years, like all the other camera manufacturers, I don't think we're going to have a camera business for much longer, other than the diehards holding on, waiting for an S1 and S1R when it might come, excuse me, and an S1H Mark II. From the latest rumors, it doesn't indicate anything's coming this fall, and maybe, just maybe, in Q1 of 2025. Panasonic dropped 12.2% in market share, a half point down to 3.6% market share. And these are global numbers. The big question for 2024 numbers is how many Panasonic customers are holding on to keep that number at 3.6%. And the other big number? Well, the overall market has retreated slightly by 3% to 7.18 million units. But let's address the doom and gloom. The doom and gloom that's been targeted towards Canon. Canon's one of those companies. It's the market leader. They're similar to Apple. People either love Apple or they hate Apple with a passion. And I understand. With that number one position, there is a certain level of arrogance. And up until recently, with the RF mount being announced back, well, the first camera coming out in October of 2018, we had to wait until pretty much July before Canon approved third-party lens makers such as Sigma and Tamron to start producing lenses. And that's good news, because for those that are looking to spend less than $1,500 on a camera, well, no, less than $1,000 on a camera, there's no way that they want to spend $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, or even $5,000 on a lens. To be able to buy a lens for $169, $249, $499 is something that, well, the market needs, at least the Canon marketplace. With Sony's E-mount, we have so many options, but on the Canon, well, on the Canon ecosystem platform, we have the R50. It's not their cheapest camera, that's the R100, and with some of the sales on right now, it's pretty cheap. And people might think, wow, okay, great, I'll go ahead and get this camera. And if you don't know anything about lenses, you might just get the kit lens and be perfectly happy. But just imagine when you realize, oh, I was watching this video or reading this article, and maybe I should see what other lenses I could get for this camera. And you find out that other than kit lenses, there really isn't a lot. Certainly nothing fast and wide such as an f1.4. And then you hear about Sony with all the lenses, all the Sigma lenses, and you start to think, was this the right decision? And that's one of the frustrations. It's one of the big frustrations for people looking at buying in the entry-level market. Now, for the pro level, well, when it comes to pros, Canon is really second to none. Although, yes, Nikon does really, really well here as well, but Canon is known for their quality, for their optics. That 100 to 300 millimeter f2.8, $9,500, I know it isn't cheap. The 600 millimeter and the 400 millimeter primes, the 800 millimeter f5.6, they're not cheap, but if you're among the best of the best and you need to get the best possible shot, you want to reduce the risk of not winning out and getting on the cover of the magazine, then yeah, you'll pay that price. But to be a successful company, you can't just target one end of the market. Not in cameras where we're down to 7.18 million units. You need to address every single segment so that when people start off with an affordable camera, and if they like it and they want to stay with it, well, they're unlikely to migrate to another system. Once you've got lenses and you start thinking, okay, you know what? I'm going to spend a little bit more. I'm going to buy a full frame camera, and I can't afford the full frame lenses at this point, but you know what? I can take my APS-C lenses and put that on the camera until I can save up enough money to buy a full frame lens, and that's how things work. It's strange, really, when you think about it. Sony with 27.9% market share, almost 28% market share, but they rarely put their cameras on sale. Since 2020, I've only seen about 5 sales for the A7S III, the A7 IV, and the A7R5, while Canon and Nikon have been using permanent discounts since 2020. I mean, just take a look at the description down below. I've got over 20 sales for Canon and Nikon, and right now, there is no sale on any Sony cameras. And Sony just had a sale over the last couple of weeks, and that's over. But the Canon EOS R5, well, it's been on a permanent sale since November, Black Friday of 2022, going on sale anywhere between $200 to $500 off. And last week it was $500 off. This week it's $400 off. The Nikon Z8 has recently been going on sale as well, from $200 to $500 off. And it was announced just back in May the 9th or 10th of last year. So Sony's managing to climb market share. A couple of years ago, they took the reins of second place from Nikon and have blown past that 20% mark up to almost 30%. And they're taking market share from Nikon, from Panasonic. Only Canon seems to be holding out at around 47% market share. What do you think is going to happen when we report next year's numbers in 2024, or more interestingly in 2025, when Sony starts to refresh a lot of their high-end cameras? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But for transparency, it is important to tell you, if you do use my affiliate links down below, I do get a small commission of anywhere from 2 to 8% back should you buy something. But a big thanks to all of you that do use my links, because, well, this channel is on the air because of you. It takes an awful lot of work. This is a second job. And this is a job I really have a passion for. I love cameras. I love photography. I even love videography even more. And by you buying stuff, every day I see a sale, I go up there, I feel a great sense of appreciation, but also this tells me that my plan to retire and have this as my full-time job, well, full-time job being 3 to 4 hours a day, is the right decision. So a big thanks, and thank you for watching till the very end. Have yourself a great day, a great week, and we'll see you again soon.